Hello, everybody out there. Great that so many of you have time on the last night of the Rauhnächte. I don't know whether you know the Rauhnächte, Richard, but before we start chatting, sorry, I'm here with Richard Abbot. Hello, Richard.
Oh, nice to see you.
I'm so full of bubbling energy, and you're always so calm, and it's really nice talking to you.
Really, but don't worry.
Okay. Yeah, do you work with the Rauhnächte, the time between the 12 nights, basically, between Christmas and the 6th of January?
Yeah, now you've translated it. Yes, I am aware of it, but it's not very well observed, I don't think.
I think in Britain it's not so much used, but here in Germany it's getting quite big, and we just finished our 12 nights today. Tonight is the night of Perchta, so I can see who's joining there, and they were all in another video right now, so that's why I say this. Anyway, because for us in Germany, kind of the year begins tomorrow after the 12 nights. I thought it would be great to have you here to talk about what's coming now up, numerology-wise. Anybody who doesn't know Richard yet, Richard is a British numerologist and tarotist. I think that's the two main things you're doing, right? And Richard is exquisite with his work. I have his, your website is in the show notes. You write a great newsletter, which you all should get. And of course, you offer counseling and many other things. So go to the website, observe it. And you were the second person I talked to when the Corona crisis started, and I decided to work on YouTube more. And we talked about Corona and the numerology of the 2020s. And I thought before we get into the number 7, we could do a little update on what does it mean to live in the 2020s, numerology-wise, and especially in the year 3 of this decade.
Sure. Well, yeah, thank you. That was a long time ago. Seems like a different world.
Exactly.
Yeah, one way or the other, for good and bad. Well, look, okay, so when it comes to numbers, as far as I'm concerned, numbers and the tarot, really, they belong together. You can't really talk about, well, I don't think you can talk about one without talking about the other. So to talk about a number is to talk about a tarot card, and to talk about a tarot card is to talk about a number. They're not the same, but there's a lot of big kind of overlap between those two things. So if we're thinking about being in the 2020s, and if we're thinking about being in the century 20, so it's called the 21st century, but it's the century that begins 20. If we're thinking about those things, then naturally we're thinking about card number 20. We're thinking about judgment, therefore. So just if anybody's wondering, I don't think it's a long story to explain why, but I don't see the number attributions on a card as being arbitrary or random. I know that some decks say, this number is this card, this number is this card, but I think there's a strong linkage as they belong to each other. So 20 is card judgment for a reason. It's not just an arbitrary attaching of the number. So when we're talking about 20 to 2020s, the year 2020, the century 20, we're dealing with judgment. We're dealing with good old Rider-Waite, Rider-Waite Smith. If we're dealing with, what's going on here? Well, this is us. Mm-hmm. This is human beings. And what's this? Well, it's something cosmic. If you want to say God, if you want to say source, it's something angelic, if you like, but it's certainly something cosmic. Yeah. So, we are I'm afraid, well, I'm not afraid, it's good and bad, it's just the way it is. We're being judged. We shouldn't be judging each other. We're not capable of judging each other. Well, we do it, but we're not capable of it really. But we are definitely being judged in a cosmic kind of way. It doesn't have to be biblical. It doesn't have to be anything be Christian about it. But we are. Let's put it another way. Rather than judged, we are. This is the century, and then the 2020s is the decade for it. But this is the century where we reap what we have sown. We reap what we have sown, and it's clear to see in almost every dimension of our society and our life. You know, I don't know what the situation is in Germany, but certainly in Britain, we have constant discussion about empire, industrialization, whether anything of the past, the consequences of the things of the past. We're constantly being subjected to this. We're constantly having to review the consequences of everything that we have done in not just last year, year before, century before that, going way back. Everything. Climate, the royal family, in Britain is a big thing, obviously not in Germany. All these things are up for renew this century, this decade, and we will have to account for what we have done. Maybe not what we have done, like me now in this body in this lifetime, but in previous lifetimes, our ancestors, our society, our civilization, we're going to be called to account for what we have done. I mean, I suppose that sounds quite portentous and quite serious, but I think it is the moment that we are in. I really do think it's the moment that we are in.
I'm just trying to translate Fegefeuer into German, into English. I'm losing my English, really. Is anybody out there who's able to translate Fegefeuer for me? Purgatory, of course. So it's a kind of
that's not a bad word for it. Yeah. Not a bad word for it at all. Consequences. And you can go as big or small as you like with this. You can, and I'm not endorsing any of these particular points of view because they're all in the mix, but you could say, well, you know, what has been the benefit of an industrialized society? Because that's been a 300-year project, and we're dealing with the consequences of it now. What's been the benefits and otherwise of a capitalist society? That's been centuries in the making, and we're dealing with the consequences of it now. What's been the consequences of a patriarchal society? And that's been centuries in the doing, and we're dealing with the consequences of it now. That and many, 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 many other things. It's all up for review. It's all up for atonement. It's all up for balancing and squaring the books of the cosmic record. Past life exploration is crucial. That's the way we get into this now as individuals, where we discover who we were and what we did and what we didn't do, and try to set it right in this lifetime. That's the deal of the times that we live in.
Yeah. What I especially liked when we talked in 2020 was that you said the century with 19 was the century of the sun, of being of nobody caring for whatever is around them. In the year 20, in the 20th century, there is this judgment card, but there's also the high priestess, especially in the decade 20, and that we have to learn a lot about the changing our thoughts about polarity, so that it's no longer the century of reason and logic as it was in the 19th or 20th century, but it's more about bringing different point of views to not necessarily together, but let them be parallel. Let them. I'm stumbling here.
The two at the start of the 20
Yeah.
Is in all numerology recognized to be a feminine number.
Yeah.
Whereas the 1 at the start of the 19 was a masculine number. So if nothing else, we've moved from a masculine energy into a more feminine energy.
Yeah.
And this is good and bad. There's plus and minus to this, definitely plus and minus, but it's happened for sure.
Yeah.
Also, the 2 gives us two answers to everything. And this is driving a lot of people crackers, driving a lot of people crazy. But we are in a time where there's more than one answer. There's more than one solution to most problems. Most problems now have to be answered with okay, well, it's this, but actually it's also this. It's not this or this. It's kind of both. So there's a big ask on us. There's a big demand on us to come up with, to not be so dogmatic, to be more nuanced and more, well, yeah, but look, there's 2 sides to the coin here, and we've got to find a way to bring these 2 sides together. Now, we see this in America, all this, the crazy, polarization in America, happening everywhere, but particularly in America.
Everywhere, I think.
Everywhere, particularly in America, because they've got their Pluto return going on as a nation, particularly America. And actually, France will have its Pluto return in about 10 or 15 years' time, and Britain will have its Pluto return in about 20 years' time. So this polarization energy is going to be really strong for quite some time. But it's no good, because the number is 2. It's not one or the other. It's both. We've got to find a way. I know it's a big expectation, but we've got to find a way, cliche, to live together. We've got to find a way for those people to accept the existence of those people, and that point of view to accommodate that point of view. That's what it's all about. Any search for dogmatic, this is the way, this is how it is, any energy like that now is gone. That's over. That won't wash now. He said dogmatically, but you know what I mean.
So my thoughts are, since 2020, I feel that the talking about transgender and using male and female in language, we probably don't have this problem so much in English as we have it in German. And talking about what is left out between male and female has really increased. Especially in 2022, which kind of makes sense because there are so many 2s in there. Could it be that in 2023, 3 kind of bringing things together or bearing something new could be about finding a first solution?
Well, I don't know whether I'd want to be hopeful enough that we would find a solution. I'm not sure that I could truthfully do that, because I think that we're in a dance. I think we're in a long-term dance between, in the matter you've just talked about, masculine, feminine, and in between. So masculine, feminine, and masculine and feminine, or neither masculine nor feminine. The whole, because as soon as you have 2, I mean, this is one of the principles of numerology. As soon as you have 2, you have 3. You can't. As soon as you have 2, there must. Kabbalah, the tree of life, talks about this. As soon as you have a number, it will generate the next number. So as soon as you have polarity, masculine and feminine, you're going to have a third state, which is either masculine and feminine, or neither masculine nor feminine. Resolving that in the short term, I don't think so. I think we're in a long-term dance with all this, and we'll just have to go with the music for quite some time, I think.
But if I think about the 3, perhaps at least we get some hints this year how we can come together again. We have this huge polarization on almost every subject, 50-50 votes, 50-50 whatever. And perhaps this is my hope for this 23 year, that this is somehow opening up a solution. Perhaps we're still there in 2090, I don't know, but perhaps.
Well,
I want to be hopeful.
Well, it might be. So again to the tarot then. So so year 23, which is what we're in, year number 23 of the 2000s. Well, what is card number 23? Well, that's a hard one to answer because we know what card number 1 to 22 is. We know that. But so that's the majors. But what's the first card? If you were going to sequence them, what's the first card, the first non-majors card? Well,
Ace of Wands, right?
Well, indeed. So there's no fixed answer to this, but I do say the Ace of Wands.
Yeah. Sorry.
Not everybody. No. I mean, not everybody will agree with that because some people say, well, no, we need the Earth needs to come first. Coins, pentacles need to come first rather than wands. I don't agree. I think fire is where we start, which is wands, and then ace is one. So I think that the Ace of Wands is card 23. Yeah. So therefore, Ace of Wands is the significator, if you like, of this year that we are now in. So you could be right that this card, this energy 23, will give us some real clues and some real possibilities of answering all these problems that we've got. But I'm not, even if I'm in a really optimistic mood, I'm not really all that optimistic because I think it's got to run its course. I think things have got to run their course of the ace to the 2 to the 3 to the 4 to the 5 to the 6 onwards and onwards before we really get any real kind of resolution for this. But we might get signs. I agree. Ace of Wands, year 23. We might get signs this year of what things might look like.
Especially you mentioned judgment being so important in this time. And judgment is attributed to Pluto in the modern correspondences, and Pluto is playing a major role this year by moving into Aquarius, right? So I think with this card, with the Ace of Wands, plus the card we're going to need to talk about now, there is hope that some forward movement is happening.
Yeah,
perhaps then in the 2030s, we are better.
Well, I think there's some hope, but I think that because it wheels within wheels, isn't it? It cycles. Is that energy, the energy of the year 23? How big is it in comparison to that energy, which is the energy of the century and the decade? It's obvious that judgment is way, way, way bigger force.
Oh, you're right.
But it's in our hands. It's in our hands. It's not, we individuals can't affect massive things, but each individual person in the situation and life that they lead, they can decide whether to become aware of their past deeds in this life and in the last lives, and to atone for them, do something about them, balance them out, learn from them, whatever. We can all decide to do that, or we can turn away from that. It's up to us, really.
Yeah, I understand this. So Schneeeule here writes that it's about finding your own way and community and not to judge others, 2023. Would you say this is what's important for 2023?
Well, it's definitely essential not to judge others because we're not qualified to do so. I mean, that's the bottom line. Whether it's a nice thing or not to judge, we're not qualified to do it. So that's why we shouldn't, because we're not in the other person's shoes. We're not living their life. We don't know what their trauma is. We don't know what their history, their backstory, their past lives are. We're not qualified to judge others. That's why we shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Community, yeah. I mean, it depends what we mean by community, but yeah, it could be. I think the going your own way thing, the peeling off from the mass, from the large group, I think that will accelerate more and more and more. I mean, this is part of the polarization, say in America, for example.
So it's more about individuality than about being in the community?
Well, so individuality in the sense of not in the sense of resigning from a kind of formless mass of people, but then from your individuality, finding others who aren't the same, but who you can kind of plug in with, and then building your own something new. I mean, this is a bit big, but one of my longer term predictions in this time of judgment, and I've said this for years, is I think what you will see is the start of new countries. You will see the start in our lifetime. We are approximately roughly the same age. We will see the start of new countries. I think it is not out of the question at all that America breaks apart. Now, that's a big thing, but it's not, you can't rule it out. The pressure in that place is so enormous, it could well break apart into separate countries. In Britain, the game is on to separate Scotland, Wales, Ireland, England. That's I won't say it's a done deal. It might take another 20 years, but it's definitely in the making. And all these things are representative of people wanting to go their own way and form alliances and community with people that are on the same page. Not just with any old body, but with people who are on the same page. Fast forward 20 years, you can hold me to it. I'll come back on in 20 years' time. There'll be more countries in the world in 20 years' time than there are now. And this will include micro countries. You'll have cities going their own way. You'll have intentional communities where, it's still legally part of Germany or legally part of England, but essentially they'll live as communes unto their own rules. That kind of community, that is definitely the way. Not saying that I like it. I'm just saying that's what's happening for sure.
Another thing which I observe is that people's in political talk now say we don't have right and left anymore, but it's more like you can be right, but still be for things the left is for and the other way around, because things are no longer as straight as they used to be, left, right, middle. And I find this quite interesting as well, because it's a bit like different new countries. There's perhaps new ways of looking at politics. And like we have in Germany now, this government with 3 very different parties. It's not working well, but it is a new way of looking at things. There's not a majority of parties anymore. There's from every corner a little bit, and it's kind of hopefully melting together somehow. But this is what I can relate to.
Well, that's an example, isn't it, of that duality that we were talking about, and people having to find a way to come together and relate to each other and understand each other. So that's definitely part of the trend. Obviously, in the land of politics, it's all a little bit messy and sometimes a little bit deceitful, but yeah, it's the way now to find common cause with people and to not have separation if you can help it.
Marion mentions that she thinks it's extremism infiltrating everything.
Well, polarization, I mean, it will be. In the land of the two, it will be. In the land of the ruling of the two, which is the number that starts everything, and the decade that we're in, it absolutely will be extremism, because that will be polarization. And all that is fueled by one of the characteristics of two, which is emotion. So what you've got now is this is one of the downsides, you haven't really got a lot of rational, sensible, reasonable discussion. What you've got is, I have an emotional emotion fueled position. No, I have a different emotion fueled position, and that's what happens. So it becomes more extreme because it's so fueled by emotion and so stripped of reason. That's one of the characteristics of the two, without a doubt.
So does this bode well for a year where the chariot rules?
Well, so then we say the chariot rules because we add up the whole thing. 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 3 gives us number 7. And this is where I will deviate slightly from the tarot, if you don't mind, because in pure numerology, uninformed by the tarot, 7 is always the number of the mind, reason, logic, science. Now, often 7 is the number of nature and mysticism as well, just to make things a bit strange. But if you take like an archetypal 7 person is somebody like Albert Einstein or Stephen Hawking, somebody like that, somebody who lives in the theoretical. So in the energy of the 7, science and academia and the mind comes very much to the fore. So this is good and bad. It might be that in 2023, this 7 gives us a balance to the emotion of the 2. We might be able to get a bit of a balance there. But my concern would be that what you'll have actually in 2023 is a real over-emphasis on the powers of science and the powers of the mind. So if I'm going to make predictions, hold me to them, but my prediction would be actually that science and technology will have even more of an influence in 2023, that they will make leaps and bounds of progress, and I'll put progress in inverted commas. We can see it. I mean, quantum computing, artificial intelligence, Large Hadron Collider, particle physics, gene therapy, gene editing, all this kind of stuff is really, it's ready to really blow, to really take off.
Yeah.
AI particularly, artificial intelligence particularly, is at a tipping point here where it's really gonna go to a new level.
Yeah.
Pluto in Aquarius would confirm the same, I think.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of science and tech and theoretical things of the mind bubbling and brewing this year. Personally, my judgment of that is I'm not too keen on that. I think there's a big downside with a lot of that stuff, which I don't think people have fully grasped. But whether that's right or not, it'll be a thing. Science, technology, technological developments, scientific breakthroughs, it'll be a thing. There'll be announcements this year, one way or another, of innovations in those areas, which really will be, could even be groundbreaking.
Yeah, that's what the astrologers say as well, that AI is going to be huge next year, and that it's much further than we have realized. In the tarot scene last year, this discussion started about tarot cards created by AI that are almost as can't be distinguished from cards which have been done by artists. And of course, in the art scene, this is happening as well, and it's quite impressive. Chris Brennan, the astrologer from the Astrology podcast, did something really interesting on this. And yeah, I'm a bit worried about this as well, I have to confess. But like with the internet, nobody was really thinking what was going to come out of it. And there has been happening a lot of shite with it, but there has also happened a lot of good with it.
Well, so we're back to the 2 again. I mean, this is the problem. So so wherever we turn here, we're back to this 2 energy that leads the century and the decade, because we haven't been taking into account the downside, or we've been obsessing about the downside. We haven't managed to get the balance.
Yeah.
All technological progress in inverted commas, comes with a cost. I mean, it shouldn't be a controversial statement. Every single technological, scientific piece of progress that has ever existed in humanity has come with a cost. The issue has always been, does the benefit outweigh the cost? Well, we haven't considered the cost for a long time, not fully, and we're suddenly considering it all of a sudden. Well, the last few years we've gone, oh, hang on a minute. We've had a massive technological shift in the past 20 or 30 years. Oh, perhaps it wasn't all good after all. Perhaps there was some downside. A lot of people didn't want to see that. A lot of people wanted to believe it was all going to be wonderful. Email was going to be wonderful. Social media, it was going to be wonderful. Internet was going to be wonderful. It was wonderful, and it was also disruptive and terrible. It was both things, and we've got to, we're in that mix of working out what the balance is.
Yeah, but this is happening all the time, isn't it? It's not, especially in this century. If you look at last century, there have been lots of things where we thought great, like not breastfeeding any longer, and instead using powder, milk powder, whatever, which I don't know why this comes up right now in my head. A lot of other examples, I'm sure. And in retrospective, we see, was it a good idea? And then we change to the opposite instead of bringing things together. It's
absolutely
human, I think.
That has been what's been happening for some time, but I think now the pace of it is greater. The visibility of the downside, we get to see the downside quicker now.
Yeah.
And also because the pace of it has been so fast for so long, and the negatives have mounted up and we've ignored them, they all kind of come on us at once. So again, we're back to the judgment card. We're back to, it's reckoning. I mean, change the word if we don't like it. Reckoning is the word I would use. We're into it. This is a time of reckoning, and we're going to have to reckon with essentially what we have done and what we have allowed to happen. And this is going to be a long process. 2023, the reckoning will be related to the number 7, and it will be related to science and technology.
So if we consider, though, the Chariot also, and the Ace of Wands you just mentioned, for me, this has an energy of we still can turn things around if we focus on our goals. But then we need to be many to get to the goal.
Reckoning and judgment don't mean doom or disaster. I would say that we will come through it fine in the end. And I think anybody that knows me knows I'm not Mr. Optimistic, but I think we will come through it fine in the end. We will come through it fine in the end, but we have to go through the process. Who said purgatory earlier on? We have to go through the process. The process of reckoning is what matters. The end of it will be fine, but we have to go through the process, each individually, as a society, as a species. We have to go through it as to what we have done and what we have allowed to happen, particularly in 2023 in the realm of science and technology. And I won't go there if you don't want me to, but there's a lot to reckon with what we have done and what we have allowed to be done in the name of science and technology over the past 3 years. There's a lot to account for there. And this will be a year when this will gather pace.
Why do you say especially in the last 3 years?
Since the mass vaccination of people across the planet.
Yeah.
And I use the word vaccination loosely.
I think we shouldn't go there because it is always a disaster to talk about this.
Yeah, it is. I agree. And of course, we won't. But yet in our society, we will go there. Because we will have to go there, because there will be, under the influence of judgment and reckoning, there's no hiding place. We have to reckon with what we have done and what we have allowed to happen. And it isn't going to happen overnight. It doesn't take 5 minutes. And it sounds awful, but it's cleansing, it's healing, it's purifying. Everything will be better as a result of it once we have gone through the sauna, sweat, and released all the toxins.
So if I go back to the number 7 and the chariot, is there anything optimistic you have to share for 2023 regarding this number, this card?
It is what I've said, not optimistic. I'm foreseeing a great rebirth and a great cleansing and a great healing of the human race. It's just that we've got to go through a bit of sweat, quite a bit of sweat, in order for that to happen. I think that's about the most optimistic thing that anybody could say. A rebirth and a healing and a renewal of humanity. I mean, does it get any better than that? I'm not sure it gets any better than that.
Anna totally agrees with you, Richard. I don't disagree with Richard at all. I am just trying to get myself into a more uplifted mood.
The Ace of Wands, card 23 for year 23, is the most optimistic of the three energies that we're talking about, because it's fire, as far as my attributions go. It's fire, and it's ace, so it's the seed, and it's vigorous. So yeah. You know, you can apply the image of the card wherever you like, but it's definitely about a light opportunity to take action, opportunity to be vigorous and be bold and move forward in your life. It's a very optimistic card, really. That's the one to get hold of. And
for me, I mean, you talked about the number 7. I am a number 7, so obviously I would like to hear something nice about myself. And I'm not so. I'm actually not such a mindy person. Well, perhaps at times, but I am not a scientist, so to speak. So for me, the number 7 always meant pioneering, meant to go boldly where nobody has gone before and stuff like this, which you can, of course, apply to what's happening with science, but also for the individual to show new ways and open new corners for where solutions lie.
The point with number 7 is that, so this is 7 people, and it's the year 7 and any influence of the number 7. It all begins in the mind, right? So this is where we would say, if you can conceive it, you can achieve it. Okay, so this is true for everybody, but in the land of the 7, it's particularly true. If you can imagine a particular outcome, then, and 7s are very good at imagining particular outcomes, then you can let that filter through, and you can take the appropriate action in your life to make that outcome actually occur. Okay, so if you were going to do things like affirmations, vision board, magical ritual, manifestation, any of this stuff that involves conceiving of a goal and bringing it into fruition in the real world, then that's the realm, that's the domain of the 7. 7s are great at that. So all number 7s out there, you too, Kirsten, everybody in this year number 7, that's the thing to do. Decide what you want. Decide what outcome you want. And I know there's other factors in life, but you decide what you want and clear as a whistle, and then this is the year to make that happen.
Yeah, you're quite right. I forgot about this. It's like a focus on where you want to go. If you look at the Crawley card, he's kind of in this time tunnel setting, and he's not moving, but he's moving because he focuses inside.
But it has to. But the focus It is, but the focus has to come first. So you have to give the time. You have to give time and energy and space to forming the image, to forming the picture. Because what you don't want to be as a number 7. So as a number 7 person, or in a 7 year like this year, what you don't want to be is reactive. You don't want to be reactive. You don't want to be having to bat the ball back all the time. You want to be saying, no, I'm in charge. I'm serving here. I'm deciding whether I do this or whether I do that. And if you're constantly only reacting in the influence of the 7, that's bad energy, because you can't conceive it. You're off balance. Nothing works then.
Yeah, that's also very good advice. The 6th year, so 2022, was a bit of a reaction year, I think, from its energy, and trying to find out what we really want. And this year, to go there with a focus, that's a very good idea.
But the focus has to come first. That's the crucial bit. You have to conceive it first. If it's reactive, if you're just reacting in your mind to scenarios that are going on, that's all the wrong polarity of the energy.
Yeah. So Dance Fan says that it's the best time for manifestation. I don't know about the Schumann resonance, I have to confess, but anyway, it's always good to manifest at the beginning of the year, and especially in a 7 year, I would agree. Yeah, interesting. My head is spinning, I have to say.
Sorry about that. It's a dance, is it not? I mean, life always, whatever the year is, whatever the card is it not always a dance? Is it not always a dance between where we were and where we're going, and who we are and who we've met, and who we are and who we've yet to meet, and who we are and what we've yet to become? There's nothing that's completely static. We're all in this kind of spiral movement of some kind, multiple spiral movements. And all I'm saying is that the spiral movement right now, according to the numbers, according to the cards, is where we've got to give a bit more attention to what we've done, and correct and rebalance and atone for and understand what we've done before we can really go forward to the next phase of our life and our evolution. How long does that take? Might take 5 minutes, might take 50 years. I don't know. Depends on the person. But we're all in that dance, or indeed game. Yes, indeed. It can equally work.
I quite like that she's called Dance Fan. Says it's a game. So
yes, I mean, and that doesn't diminish its importance, and that doesn't mean that we shouldn't care about it, and it doesn't mean that it won't upset us if it goes wrong. But it is, I'm convinced, it is just a dance. It is just a game, and the phase of the game, the phase that the dance has moved into, is as we've been describing.
Yeah, I think I need to digest this now.
Yes, number 7. Number 7 is always 7 always needs to digest what it has been, what it has taken on. Sounds good to me.
I hope everybody out there is convinced like me that Richard is really fantastic. I always appreciated you so much. And I'm really hoping that I will see you in October in London. I really have to say this.
Cross fingers.
Yes. If not, we need to do another live, perhaps in the middle of the year, where we can already see how the 7 or the year has developed. And we can go kind of take it from there and see whether we can refocus to get the year in the way we want it to have. If we find people who all want the same.
Begins in here.
It does. Okay, everybody. As I see it, you seem to have enjoyed the talk. please go and visit Richard's site. And as I said, he has a great newsletter. It's as optimistic as his thoughts are.
Which is very optimistic. Indeed.
Very optimistic. And I'm sure we all profit from what you're saying. I mean, I can totally relate to it, as I said, but I want to have it more cheerful.
That's an attitude, mindset game. You know, in the dance, we can frown as we dance, or we can smile as we dance. We're going to be dancing anyway, so we may as well smile.
Isn't this a good finishing word? Okay. Everybody, at 8, there's going to be another session here with Roe and the Lady of Spirits. I forgot about her name. So you can stay tuned in here, and I'm sure we will talk to Richard again. And Richard, thank you very much for doing this for me. As I said, I need to digest and focus now. I need to focus now. Everybody go and focus today, please.
Nice to see you, Kirsten. Thank you.
Yeah, nice to see you too. Speak to you later.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.